In the first chapter of the seventh book in the Metaphysics, Book Zeta, Aristotle moves on to the fundamental meaning of being, of which the primary category is substance. He writes, "The question, what is that which is just the question, what is substance? To understand being is to understand substance. Substance is the deepest underlying thing upon which everything stands. Some philosophers considered substance to be a type of matter, for example, air, water, earth, etc., or atoms, but Aristotle has a broader notion of what substance is, which we'll soon find out. Aristotle begins by asking whether substance consists of processes or things. He responds that substance is a thing underlying processes or things that are doing something. For example, the concept of walking is not more substantial than the thing that walks. This distinction is rightly mirrored in language, he says, as it ascribes walking to the walker. In the sentence, the man walks, for example, the subject, the man, refers to the substance, whereas the predicate, which is walks, refers to the attribute or characteristic of the substance. Walking cannot happen without a substance to walk. The acts of sitting or walking or being good, for example, owe their being to substance. In chapter 2, Aristotle rehashes what a substance might be and looks at previous answers from various schools of thought. Some philosophers thought substance was found in physical bodies, such as those of animals and plants, as well as in more elemental ones, such as fire, earth, water, and air. Some thinkers limited substance to what humans can perceive with their sense organs. Others thought substances were more than such perceptible entities. For instance, some thought substances were surfaces, lines, and points. Plato, Aristotle says, thought that forms and mathematical entities were substances. Plato's nephew, the philosopher Ctesippus, included the soul as a substance as well. Anyway, in chapter 3, Aristotle advances his ideas as to what substance is. He says that the main underlying possibilities for what it could be are matter, form, or the composite of the two. He looks at matter, noting that a substance cannot be an attribute or characteristic of matter, such as a spatial dimension, but must be the bearer of attributes, the thing that holds or has characteristics. As an example of matter, he posits the bronze of a statue. If it were possible to look at a solid material object and take away all of its attributes, including its quantity of three dimensions, it is necessary to consider what would be left, because substance is the most fundamental thing. However, what is left as matter after stripping away the statue's attributes would seem obscure, because we would find nothing left over, Aristotle says. Aristotle instead proposes that substance is more the form or a composite of form and matter than matter itself. An example of form or shape form, Aristotle says, is the geometry of an object's appearance. The form, that is the shape of the statue, is more the substance of the statue than its bronze is. The reason is that the most central features of substance are separability and thisness. It is possible to separate substances by knowing their forms, but matter of the same kind cannot be separated, because all matter would then appear identical, as it has no attributes in itself. The matter of a bronze statue is the same matter as a bronze square. A substance can also be distinguished by its thisness or its essence, as in essential, not accidental attributes, which makes it what it is. As the composite of matter and form is not as fundamental as either individually, as it is composed of both, it cannot itself be substance. However, later in the Metaphysics, Aristotle will re-examine whether this statement is actually the case. In chapter 4, Aristotle states that substance can admit of only essential attributes, intrinsic characteristics, and not accidental ones. Essence defines something in a primary way. Moreover, a substance is identical to its essence. This idea implies that a substance and its essence cannot be separated, again in opposition to Plato, who thinks that particular things and forms are separate. Chapters 7 to 9 establish Aristotle's theory of imminent forms, or internal forms. The form of something is internal to each particular and not external as Plato's forms are. Chapter 7 focuses on forms in relation to both natural and artificial production. The form of a natural entity produced by nature, such as a man or a plant, is its species. Note that the ancient Greek word for both form and species, as well as essence, type, and idea, was the same word, eidos. Therefore, even by definition, a form is a species. Thus, each human being has as their essence their form, which is their shape, which is their species form, as it were, and this form is a human being's substance. In natural production, species form begets species form. it is man that begets man. In artificial production, which Aristotle refers to as part thinking and part making, the form as an idea in the mind begets the artificial object. As an example, an architect will begin with the idea or form or essence of a building, which originates the actual building. Essence precedes existence. In both natural and artificial production, the form precedes the product. The building is not its matter, that is, its bricks, etc., just as a person is not their flesh and blood. The substantial thing that makes a building, and a human is the form. This concept is known as Aristotle's theory of substantial forms. It is often contrasted with Plato's theory of forms. In chapter 8, Aristotle states that although a form precedes and produces something, a form itself cannot be produced. A bronze sphere, Aristotle says, is produced by the sphere form, the formal cause, and the bronze itself, which is the material cause. So it is the composite form matter object that is produced, not the form itself. This idea does not imply that forms exist separately from material objects, as do Plato's forms, because the form exists in a preceding particular thing. The Aristotelian form is always imminent, internal to particular things, while the Platonic form is always transcendent or external to particular things. The remaining chapters in Book Zeta somewhat repeat by extrapolating or refining the information found in the first 8 chapters.